Okay, I think we're good. All right, I'm just going to set this phone over here. It doesn't fall over on me. How's everybody doing tonight? So we have our Thrifty Thursday project here, our little reindeer gnome, or reindeer round. I got gnome on the brain. All right, we've got a few people popping in. Sorry for the delay. I was just getting set up, making sure everything was okay. I noticed there's a bit of lag, so if there's lag, I apologize. Really not much I can do about that. Hi, Krista. Okay, so we have a few pieces here to set aside. So basically, we're going to set the whole reindeer aside for a second. We're going to prep the background. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to set that in there for a second. And I want to put a stain on the back of this. So I opted to use some of the vintage effects. Now this brown I felt was a bit too dark, so I'm going to mix it with some white and see if I can bring it down to a lighter shade. It might be an epic fail, not sure, but we're going to give it a go. And I'm just going to apply this with a baby wipe. Let's see how this pans out. Let me get my stylus. We're just going to mix these two together and see what kind of color we come up with. And I've never mixed these stains before. Not sure if you have, but we're going to find out if it's a possibility. I think that might work. I didn't want anything too dark, so if I don't like it, we can always darken it up after. So this little round is 25% off just today, only until midnight. I've pinned the post there. I think it's still there. Yes, it's pinned. So if you're interested in one of these, it's 25% off until midnight tonight for the Thrifty Thursday deal. All right, let's get some wet wipes. And I'm going to remove my face from the feed here in a second, just because it's distracting to you and me. And then we can just focus on the painting. So I'm going to go with the grain of the wood, and I'm just going to dip my baby wipe. I don't know if I'm liking this color or not, but let's find out what is what. Oh, it's not so bad. Again, I just wanted a nice light, but I wanted it to have a little bit of a stained look to it. So baby wipe stain is the way to go. It's fast, easy, not as messy as you might think it would be. So we're just going to stain this, and then we're going to set this aside, and we're going to start working on our reindeer. So if you do purchase one of these, you can always pop back to this video and watch how I painted mine. Just for reference, if you want to change up colors or anything like that, you can do that. But this is just a little guide to show you how to paint the project. Now you could dry this with your dryer if you wanted to, but because we have to paint the reindeer and the lettering and all of that, we can just set this aside and let it do its thing. If it's still a bit wet when I need to glue, I'll just put my dryer on it then, but it should be fine. This is just water-based stain, so it should be okay. All right, so I think I'm okay with that color. So I think I achieved the not too dark, not too light scenario. I'm happy with it. All right, so that's good. We'll just get rid of that baby wipe. We'll set this little guy aside, and we'll bring over our Don't mind the mess. That's from last week's Fantango. All right. So we're just going to dismember this guy. And I'm going to start with my letters. I'm going to paint them with a red. But I need to paint with some gray first. So you can see where these little antlers rest. So technically you wouldn't have to paint where the antlers, where they land on here, because, they're going to be covered. But, I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're just going to paint our lettering. And I think that I'm just going to kind of mark with a pencil where my letters kind of land, because, what is the point of, and I'm just going a little bit beyond that. I think it's about there. If there's anywhere I missed, we can always touch it up later. Not sure if anybody's saying anything. I'm sort of watching comments at the same time, so if you have anything you want to say, I'll be reading. All right, so let's grab some of this gray. So I'm going to use a sponge, and I'm just going to kind of rub that on there. I'm not dabbing with it. I'm just kind of rubbing it on there. And this is kind of a quick way to get your paint on evenly. Now I'm putting this gray on in case people don't know why. It's just to make your reds pop a little bit better, and you don't have to use as many coats. Okay, we'll dry that. Okay, now that we have that down. So I'm not sure if you were on last week's live for our Thrifty Thursday, but I was mentioning that if you have extra paint laying around that you haven't used in a while, this is a great way to use it up. So I actually have some chalk paint in cranberry sauce that I'm going to use. That's the color, cranberry sauce. Use for my red. So instead of it sitting here and drying up, I'm going to put it to good use. All right, let's grab a makeup sponge. We'll see if we can add this with our sponge. Just the same. I might switch this up in a second. We'll see how it goes. It's not so bad. Definitely have to put a couple coats on. But by putting the gray on there, it alleviates the possibility of having to put on multiple coats. So 2 would be a blessing rather than 6 or 8, and it's still not covering. It can be very frustrating. Red can be very frustrating. All right, let's dry that coat, and then I think I'm going to put on a second. And we also have his nose that is going to be red as well. So while we have this red out, we'll pop over and do that after I finish this part. Might as well, since we have red on our sponges, we might as well paint that too. And I think 2 coats is going to do it. All right, I think that looks good. Quick dry, and then it's this top piece. There's a little highlight circle there, oval. We're going to paint this piece red as well. So everything else on this backer board, we don't really need to paint because it'll be layered with more pieces that we are going to paint. So, I mean, why waste the paint? My thoughts. Okay, so let's set that aside. And we'll paint this one red. So I'll get my gray. Give it a quick dry, and then we'll put our red on. I'm going to also get my tape in place because for these smaller parts, we can stick them down on our masking tape. So let us do that. So this will just help hold all of those little pieces in place so we don't have to get our fingers all up in the paint, which, you know, we might still do, but it helps a little bit. Okay, we're all set. So now we can stick that little ditty down there and then come into our red and see it doesn't slide around on us, which is kind of nice. Second coat, and then we can dry this and set our nose aside and move on to the next pieces. So I covered up that little engraved oval, but I can still see the edging of it so that when we put our little piece on there, we know where to place it, which is kind of nice. We don't have to guess. You might not be able to see it on camera, but I definitely can see it, and you will too if you have one of these kits. So I'm going to do antlers next, and I'm going to base those in some buttermilk. This is his Deco Art buttermilk color. Excuse the noises. We're getting down to the wire on that one. All right. So we're just going to go straight into the buttermilk for these. You can dab on these smaller parts if you want to, or rub the paint on like we did for the bigger pieces. It doesn't really, dabbing sometimes helps to keep it off the edges. I don't paint my edges. I know some people like to, but I try to just leave them as is. And I'll put a second coat on there. First coat really sinks in, so I try to put at least 2 coats on each of these little pieces. All right, we're just going to set those aside, let them dry. All right, and these eyes, the main portion of his face I'm going to do with a little bit of honey brown. Let's find a clean makeup sponge. And you can go right over those engraved parts as well. They will be covered, and you'll be able to still see where to place your pieces on top. Second coat, get a little better coverage with the second coat. Okay, I'm just going to dry this bigger piece. And then we have his muzzle, and I'm going to do that with a little bit of burlap, I think. And that's a Deco Art color as well. Burlap for this piece. And a second coat as well for this one. You can see how the second coat is a bit brighter. That first coat's sinking in the wood. All right. Set that one aside as well. All right, so we have eyes, and we have that little highlight. We also have the snowflake, the eye centers, which come in this little block, and we'll pop these out after. And then we have the inner ears. So we have a few different colors here to finish these last little pieces. So we're going to base the eyes in some black. The center of the eyes will be white, and the snowflake also white, and the little highlight for the nose also white. So we'll get all of those done at the same time. And this should be it for our pieces, and then we can start doing a little shading on these, and then we can glue them all together on our background, on our round. So when you get your kit, the little eye centers will come in that little block because they do tend to try and run away on you. So that just keeps them in place until you need them, and then we'll just pop them out when the time comes to glue. So we don't need those little eyes now. I'm going to put another coat on my snowflake. And the centers of its ears, these two pieces, I'm going to do with some pink. All right, we can set all of those aside as well. And we have our little ear centers. And I got some poodle skirt pink here, so you can use any pink you have. But that is what I have close by. All right. So now at this point, I want to do a little bit of shading on this guy. So I'm going to use a little bit of burnt umber, and this is where I'm going to bring out my angled brush. Now, if you just want to straight up paint yours and put them together, that is totally fine. I like to shade mine a little bit just to give it a little something extra. So I have my angled brush. I'm just going to grab a paper towel here. And I'll get my brush wetted. I'm going to find my other angled brush. There it is. Let's use that one instead. So all I'm going to do with the burnt umber is I'm just going to load the side of my angled brush, and I'm just going to shade just along the edge of the pieces. Now this just gives it a little something extra by shading this. And this isn't difficult to do. You're basically just running the edge of the brush right on the edge of the wood piece. And that's it. Nothing hard. I'm going to dry this for a sec because I'm just pulling that paint off that I just put on there because it's still wet. So just dry it in between coats too. And then you can add more if you feel it needs more with a second coat. Okay. So that's fine there. This piece is his little muzzle. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the burnt umber for this as well. And I'm just going to shade along the bottom edge of this. I might even go all the way around. And I think I will, just because we can. All right. So that's that piece. I'm going to put a little bit of shade on the bottom edge of these antlers too. So I'm just going to go along this, and I'm just going to dirty them up a little bit with our burnt umber. Okay, let's get the bottom of this one. Okay, and I think I'm ready to highlight with a little bit of white too while we are doing all of this. We can add our little white highlights to these. So we'll put them the way they're supposed to be. So here, so we'll grab some white, and you can, scuff some white highlights onto the top edge of your antlers. Okay, and we can set those aside. Same with our little reindeer. You can add a little bit of, white highlight to the top of his head. And we're not going to go over the parts we already did with burnt umber, but we just want to add that little extra highlight to the top. And the white will fade out a little bit as it dries. And if it does and you want to add more, you can just go in with a second coat once it's dry and fix that up. This part will be covered with there's not a whole lot on there to do because we're going to be covering most of that with our nose. So I'm just going to leave that piece as is. The little areas here for the inside of his ears, they go like that. So I had to find the bottoms. So let's take a little bit of this red that we used for our nose. And I'm just going to, oops, I got a little brown in there. I'm just going to put a little bit of red along that bottom edge. We'll dry that and highlight the tops with some white. Now I'm realizing now I probably should have cut those out so these went straight in there, and I probably will do that on my next cut. But I didn't do that on this one, so I apologize. Okay, for my snowflake, I think I want to add, I'm going to get a little silly here. I'm going to take a little bit of pink. And a little bit of white on my sponge. Not that brown. And I'm just going to put a little bit of pink on the ends of my snowflake. You can do any color you want, blue if you want to. I just thought I would change it up and put a little bit of pink because we had a little bit of pink here, so it just kind of all ties together. Let me just get a brush because I need to touch up my white where I messed it up a little bit doing that. All right, so there's that. The bottom edge of his nose, I'm going to shade with a little bit of black. Okay, we'll try that. I think we're ready to start assembling some things here. All right, so that goes there. So if you want, on this backer piece here, if you want to add a little shading and highlighting to your letters, you can do that. You can bring some black down on the edge of the bottom of the letters, add some white highlights to the top. I'm just going to leave mine, but I mean, you could do the same exact sort of thing as that we did on, whoops, on the pieces and parts. So let's get this dry fit and then we'll start gluing this guy together. And see how he looks. Yeah, I definitely think I'm going to insert these little pink ones on my next cut. So if you purchase one, they will be inset for you. Eyes go there, nose goes here. He's a handsome feller. All right, and we have our little highlight here. Our snowflake there with our little pink ends. I like that a lot. It looks cute. And then these are our centers for the eyes. We'll get to those in a second because if I take them out now, I might risk losing them. So now that it's dry fit, we can grab our glue and start gluing these pieces. I'm going to assemble all of this and then put the whole thing onto my round. So I'm just going to start with this. We'll take this nose off for a sec. I'm going to start with this muzzle piece and just kind of flip that out of there. Now I use Titebond Quick and Thick. This is just I just put it in these little bottles for a paint party. So I'm just using up what was left over from that. But that is what we're using. This is what I'm using here. This is the brand. If you want to grab some, I got mine off of Amazon. I'm just going to hold that piece in place. Get this one where I want it. Let's get all these little parts out of the way. We're going to move on to this bigger piece here next. I think this one might be empty. Oh, there's still some in there. Now, sometimes this glue, it does tend to squeeze out just like any other glue, but this one dries clear. So I just want to grab that, excess off of there if there is any. And then you won't see that little bit of residue on there once it dries. All right, antlers next. I think we're out of glue in this one. All right, let's not continue to try and get glue out of that. We'll move on to another. And you don't really need a whole lot of glue for these pieces. Make sure this is lined up with the backer piece. You do have a minute or so to adjust with this glue, and then you don't. I mean, when it sticks, it sticks. It means business. My goodness. That could have been a catastrophe. Okay. Takes a hot minute to get this correctly. I want it to line up here perfectly. Now you can see there's a little gap there, but that's where our snowflake is going to land. So I'm not too upset about that. But I want it to be all even here on that backer board. So I think we achieved that. Speaking of snowflake, we can go ahead and put that on. If I can get more glue out of this bottle. We might have to resort to our big one because I think I've achieved emptying these. These tiny pieces. Okay, I've struggled enough. I don't want to struggle anymore with that. And like I was saying, I will do these on an inset when I cut for your orders. It would appear that that was my mistake. But for this purpose of this video, we're going to just get them on here. But just try to remember those will be inset on your kit. I have a little bit too much glue on there I want to get off. Eyes, since we put glue on there already, we might as well get those stuck down. And nose. I'm going to use a bit of this glue on the back of this. A little highlight. Just set that aside for a second. Make sure our black shadow is on the bottom edge and our little engraved part is where it's supposed to be. And I do believe that this should also be an inset as well, so I will cut these to go into that little piece. But for right now, this is where it is, girls. All right, so these little eyes, we are going to attempt to not lose these. I'll use my little stylus here to pop these out. Just use the top of my glue bottle to get some glue on there. And again, these probably should be inset too. So there are a few things that I will change when I cut your orders. Okay. That one didn't like it. Not enough glue, I guess. You see, if these were cut inlet, they would just pop into that little hole. Yours will. No harm, no foul. It's okay. Okay, stop playing with those and let them set up. So now at this point, we can bring over our backer board and get this guy in place. And there you can see what he looks like on the backer. And how cute is he? Now you can use this area up here, so you can position this where you want. And then put a bow up here also. So I will also send this with a sawtooth hanger for the back, so that you, because it doesn't have pilot holes here for a string, but you could put a bow here. We'll give you a sawtooth hanger in your kits for the back as well, so you can hang it up. That's super cute. I think that is that. I'm not going to glue him down right this minute, but that is what he will look like when he's finished. I like him a lot, and I like the pink on the snowflake. All right, so that was a Thrifty Thursday. So the link is pinned here in the comments if you want to pop over and grab one of these kits. This is a 10-inch round, and you will get all the pieces to put together the backer, the sawtooth hanger, to do your project. You will just need to add your own bow or any kind of embellishments that you want. But it is on sale for 25% off today until midnight only Eastern Standard Time. So if you want one on the discount price, grab one before midnight, because they'll go back up to regular price after that. All right. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me.